Part 15. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 142. Chapter 142 Siege, 9th More, Seek Subscription. The Dark Thorns Mountain, lying on the southwest of Union City like a giant beast. The terrain here is not high. The thorns on the mountains are clustered, and the traffic is not easy, so there are very few semi-elf hunters who come here to hunt. This also led to the inaccessibility near the Thorns Mountain, becoming a paradise for wild animals. Today, the tranquility of the Thorns Mountain was suddenly broken. Step. There was a sound of horseshoe, which shocked countless birds and beasts in the forest. Several sharp arrows flew over and did not shoot the person, but let a passing elk suffered a pond fish. The two sides of the chase were black and white, and the black ones were naturally black, and those wearing white armored military uniforms were the Eastern Tianma Legion. There is only one person in black, and the number of white people is slightly a little bit, about 30 rides, and from the perspective of their military uniform styles, they should be whistle. This is actually a bit strange. Because the army was fighting, the whistle rides is generally not desperately chased when encountering it. First of all, the main task of the whistle is to bring back the message, not the head of the enemy. Moreover, if it is pursuing too much, it is easy to be introduced into the encirclement of the enemy army. It is entirely a way to find a dead way. However, now the whistle of the Tianma Legion is pursuing the Black Cavaliers in front. The reason why they are so desperate is because they discovered that this was a big fish worker of Colin Angle. Although the whistle of the Tianma Corps did not understand, why did the distinguished northern venture in the northern border come out in person to find out the news, but after seeing the completely consistent face in the portrait of Colin, they put aside all their concerns. Want to seize the first achievement of this battle. The mountain road is difficult, and there are thorns hindered, and the speed of both sides has not mentioned the limit. But in the end of chasing and escape, it was almost the mountainside. Some foam appeared on the horse's mouth, and it seemed that it might be able to fall to the ground at any time. Colin reached out and touched the horse's neck, and found that the war horse under him was sweating like a slurry. Obviously it was about to be. The semi-elf's war horse is really not as good as the northern border. Colin secretly spit out. At this moment, the war horse is suddenly rampant, rolling on the ground, and the bones broke and made a crisp sound, which was extremely harsh. Colin was also thrown out immediately, but in the air, he had adjusted his posture. When he landed, he rolled out of the impact, and then jumped up healthily. Hurry up, grab him. The east whistle chased by the back suddenly rushed up like a chicken blood. Colin unhappily pulled out the blade of judgment in his waist, facing the more than 10 riding horses, and picked up the battle. Boom. A loud noise. Blade of judgment burning red flames, and the golden light of the stabbing broke out in an instant. Followed by the bloody blood, it seemed like a blood rain. The cavalry who hit the Colin on the front even took the horses and was split in half. Blood and golden light gradually dissipated, and the figures of Colin were gradually revealed. At this time, he was already full of blood, as if the devil climbed out of hell. Colin licked the blood full of his face and was about to ridicule a few words, but saw another cavalry hit him from the side. Boom. Blade of Judgment turned into a red light and split the cavalry into 2 sections. However, next, there are 3rd, 4th, 5th place. As if they were crazy, these east whistle rushed to Colin, like moths that fluttered. After the 15th Cavalry was slaughtered, Colin saw the 16th Cavalry rushing towards him, and finally changed his face. The holy light emerged from the other party shows that the 16th is a knight. Colin had been numb on his arms by the crazy impact at this time, and he dared not pick up this collision. He quickly rolled up and avoided the impact of the other party. At this moment, he finally understood why the high-level knights ended with the siege of the army alone. Just when Colin thought about whether to transform, Lin Zhong sounded the sound of horseshoe again. Soon, more than 10 black armored cavalry appeared on the battlefield, protecting Angle voice-in-law. Seeing this, the East Tingyuxian knew that it was definitely impossible to catch this big fish today, and immediately turned the horse to escape under the mountain. "Master Viscount, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Colin groaned with a long sword, and called at the cavalry trying to chase. "Don't chase it, go with them." "Yes." "Adults, a large number of East Army has gathered in the mountains. We have been surrounded. Do you want to break through immediately?" Colin touched the blood on his face and shook his head and said, "No, it's not yet." "Yes." Colin looked at each other's young but resolute face, and suddenly asked, "What, are you scared?" The Black Trojan whistle shook his head decisively. "Adults, the Black Riding Army is never afraid of fighting." Colin raised his eyebrow. "Even if it is a must-have battle, isn't it afraid?" "Don't be afraid." The young Black Trojan whistle straightened his chest, and it took granted. Colin stared at each other's eyes and looked around for a week, and found that there was really no fear in the eyes of these Black Club soldiers. His mood suddenly became very complicated, hesitated for a moment, and said softly, "In this battle, you will really die." "Alas." The Black Laborer sent back on the armor that hit the chest, and said, "As long as we can report the revenge of the Shadow Canyon, we die without regret. Death without regret. Death without regret." Nympho. Looking at the generous face in front of him, Colin suddenly felt that something was flowing in his heart. Perhaps this is the real reason why the Black Cavalry can be invincible. Colin took a deep breath, solemnly buckled his right hand in front of his chest, saluting a military salute towards everyone, and said loudly, "I promise you, I will fight you to the last moment. Moreover, this East Army will definitely destroy it in the semi-elf kingdom." Under the mountain, the Tianmakor camp. A knight walked into the temporary command post. After rushing to salute, he reported loudly, "Lord Marquis, I have found the trace of Angle Viscount on the Thorns Mountain." Marquis Verson's eyes brightened. "Are you sure?" "Okay, I have handed it with him." "Okay." Marquis of Chung Vincent slapped the table excitedly, stood up, and walked back and forth in the camp. Combined with the situation detected by other scents of whistle before, this Thorns are indeed hidden in a troops of more than 8,000 people. Now I have seen the trace of Colin. The Marquis of Wesson is basically determined. The Black Truer army was hiding in this mountain. Oh, this Colin Angle is really stupid, and he hides the army in such a dead place. Moreover, he lacks the courage to decide. If he rushed out of the army decisively earlier, he might still escape apart, but unfortunately, luo.com has now been woven, and he just wants to run and can't run away. After a while, he stood again and ordered it. "Pass the order of our army, stay at the foot of the mountain, don't let any Black troop soldiers rush out. Also, let the soldiers cut off trees and collect weeds. Early in the morning, I will burn this Thorns." Yes. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 143. Chapter 143, Burning Mountain, 10th, Seeking Subscription. When the sun bloomed again, the Thorns were suddenly angry. At this time, when the autumn and early winter, when the sky was dry, the leaves and branches of the mountains made the fire make the fire again. Looking at it from high altitude, the foot of the Thorns at this time has risen into a dragon, and spread towards the mountain at a very fast speed. Those who have experienced the fire will understand that the fire is really terrible, but even more terrible, it is actually a thick smoke caused by the fire. It is the most mighty real murderer. As the fire and thick smoke continued to reach the top of the mountain, the screams, horses hissing, and shouting finally made the Thorn Mountain boiling instantly. The army on the mountain finally couldn't continue to hide, without the order of the officer, and immediately rushed down the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, the Tianmakor has long been waiting. But when the first soldier rushed out of the fire, the generals of the East were suddenly found that the other party was not wearing the military uniform and armor of the Black Army at all. Even he is not human. It's a semi-elf. As more and more semi-elf soldiers rushed down the mountain, the East people were confused. Isn't it that the Black Cavalry was hiding on the mountain? Why is it all the semi-elf now? However, the people in the East were doubtful, but they were not slow in their hands. They immediately shot their arrows towards those half-elf and rolled on the ground. There are always some lags on the information transfer on the battlefield. At this time, the generals of the generals have not realized the seriousness of the problem. Most people are still thinking. Perhaps the Black Cavalry rushed out of other directions. However, they didn't know that at this time, it was almost all semi-elf that rushed out of the mountain. It is almost, because there is only one direction in the foot of the southwest mountains. A team of Black Army is rushed out. There are not many people, only 100 riders. But this has excited the East generals there, not to mention, there is still a big fish in this team of the Black Army. That's Colin Angle. Hurry up, don't let him run. The Black Army led by Colin was like a tiger down the mountain at this time, with the momentum of imposing, hitting the position of the Tianma Legion. Alas! Blood splashing, broken limbs fluttered. At the beginning of this confrontation, it entered the worst stage. However, after all, the Black Army was too small. Although they rushed the line of defense of the Malaysian army, most people were trapped in the enemy's position, and only a few cavalry rushed out of tenaciously behind Colin. Quick, inform the cavalry, chase. The Tianma Legion also has a cavalry. Although the number is not large, the fame is not as good as the Black Army, but it is more than enough to use the Black Rider scattered soldiers to chase the head of the mountain foot. The sharp whistle kept echoing in the forest, and a team was arranged in the east of the surroundings of the Wheat Mountain. Khalil and his party did not dare to turn back, and kept drilling into the forest, trying to make trouble for the chase behind him. However, there are still too many troops. A branched arrow kept flying around them and took away the life of a companion from time to time. I don't know how far running out. As soon as Colin turned around, he found that there were only three Black Club soldiers behind him. However, the chase behind him is like a sacrum. How can you not throw it away? And even the sharp whistle is even vaguely ahead. It should be the surrounding East Cavalry team. Facing the desperate situation, the last three black troops exchanged a look at each other, and suddenly tacitly stopped the war horse. When Colin heard the horse sing, he quickly turned his head and saw that the three of them were slowly turning their heads and put on a backbone posture. What are you doing? Master Viscount, let's help you block the chase. Colin also stopped immediately and walked back towards the three. Master Viscount, you run quickly. Colin shook his head. I promised you to fight you to the last moment. Master Viscount. Don't say any more. I just hope you don't hate me and bring you into this death place. No, Master Viscount, this is willing to be willing as long as your plan can be carried out smoothly, as long as the revenge of the Shadow Canyon can be reported, it is worthwhile to pay any price for this. Colin didn't know what to say at this time. With a deep breath, he quickly pulled out his sabers and yelled, "Don't worry, they have to die." With the roar of Colin, the four rides rushed towards hundreds of people's East Cavalry team like this. Nympho. Heroes are respectable, but heroes are not invincible. Soon, only the four heroes left alone in the surrounding circle of hundreds of East Cavalry. Angle Viscount, let go of the weapon, kneel and surrender according to the rules of the aristocracy. We will give you a preferential treatment. You can also write to the Angle family to redeem you back. The head of the East Cavaliers shouted loudly towards Colin, with an indescribable pride on his face. But soon, his face changed. Because Colin ignored his persuasion at all, he looked at the arrow feathers inserted on himself indifferently, and pulled it down one by one. The East Cavaliers frowned, and the slow attitude of the opponent obviously made him very unhappy. Angle line, don't struggle fearlessly, you have lost this battle. Are we defeated? Colin finally spoke, and he couldn't hear any fear or loss in his tone. So, do you think you have won? The East Cavaliers were speechless for a while, and felt that the young voice in front of him would not be broken by his brains. How can you ask this stupid question? Colin had already gone the arrows on his body at this time, and then he stretched his fingers and pointed at the body of the 3 black troops at his feet. He asked, "There are these warriors, what do you win in the East?" The East Cavaliers hummed coldly, stepped forward, and was going to wake up the enthusiast of the Northern Realm that was still intoxicated in the fantasy of self-fantasy. But as he approached Colin step by step, he found that the opponent's momentum was rising rapidly. Even let him have the illusion of the opponent's body rapidly. However, this is not an illusion. Colin is really growing. Click. The original armor could no longer accommodate the swelling body, and it was instantly rising. Dongjing Knight stared at the little giant who appeared suddenly in front of him, and forgot to escape for a while. Did you win? Colin opened his blood basin and roared with a punch. Alas! Instantly flesh and flesh, the East Cavaliers were completely smashed into a piece of meat. Devil, devil! The remaining East Cavalry was suddenly frightened. It wasn't until Colin waved the huge batwing and killed them before they realized that they would run away. However, how can you run over the sky by running on the ground? Colin behind the transformation seemed to be a life-threatening one after another. Nympho. When the other East Cavalry rushed here, he could only be stubborn at the blood and the broken body on the ground. This, what happened to this, is it slaughter? This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 144. Chapter 144 Broken Army, Part 1. It's gone. What is gone? Did you just report that he has locked his trace? In the temporary command office of the Tianma Corps, Marquis of Kura Vincent shouted towards the presence of the presence. It's locked just now, but now, again, I can't find it again. Waste, continue to find me, you want to see someone, see the corpse, Colin Angle is so living, can you still fly? Yes. After the order of the officer hurriedly left, Marquis Vincent took the water cup, just took a sip, but was scalded. Who prepared the tea? Do you want to burn me? A man next to him kneeling on the ground tremblingly, and couldn't help mercy. Oh! The sword light flashed, and the poor guy's head was cut off by Marquis of Vincent. Looking at the blood flowing on the ground, the anger of the Marquis of Vincent finally vented. After putting away the long sword, Marquis returned to the military map again, silent. Naturally, the attendants and the remaining officers in the command station did not dare to come out, for fear of being angry by Marquis. Before the start of this battle, Marquis Vincent could be said to be a bamboo. But when more and more semi-elf, instead of the Black Army rushed down from the thorns, Master Marquo's temper became irritable. Everyone starts to turn around. An idea won't be played by the northern people, right? I don't know how long it has been, and the sound of shouting outside gradually calmed down. An East Cavalier stepped into the command post and reported, Master Marquis, the battle has ended, this time our army won a great victory. More than 3,000 burnt bodies were also found on the Mountain of Thorns. Are all semi-elf? Yes, it's all semi-elf. If human beings, there are only 100 people. When they look at the equipment, they should be the Black Army. When they are trying to rush out of the encirclement, they have been killed by our army. What about Colin Angle? Have not get it yet. Jill Vincent didn't speak, and the camp was once again fell into a difficult silence. It stands to reason that the Battle of Thornchan is indeed a great victory in the east, but now no one dares to show the joy that the winner should have. For a long time, Marquis Wenson finally spoke again, and there was no ambition before the war in the tone. So, are we being deceived, the Black Army, but the half-elf army hidden in the mountain? Yes. Where is the real Black Army now? Marquis Woodson murmured to himself. An officer whispered, adults, will the Black Army hide in Union City? Union City. John suddenly changed his face suddenly, and he shouted in a hurry. Hurry up, go to the notification of Austin and let him leisure the army immediately. Master Orton, Her Majesty invited you and Marquis in the city to rest. Does your Queen Her Majesty go out of the city to meet Lord Marquis? Is this a bit rude? Half-elf messenger suffered slightly, and then explained with a smile, Master Viscount, His Majesty the Queen is not in good health today, so he can't go out. I hope you can understand it. Viscount Austin sneered, then let the Viscount Angle come out to welcome. This, how can we be eligible to ask what to do with Angeli Irvisa? Huh, you go back and tell Angle Viscount, I just waited for him outside the city until noon. If it was noon, he had not let Vera out of the city to welcome the Marquis of Vincent, so don't blame me. Into Union City go, catch him with Vera. The elf messenger widened his eyes. Apparently, it was unexpected that the Vacus of Austin suddenly turned his face. Master Viscount, why are you? The Viscount Austin waved impatiently and scolded, okay, I'm too lazy to say more to you now. You will return to the city immediately and bring my words to Ogline. His Majesty also warned the Queen that it was best to see the current situation, don't let this beautiful garden urban become ruined. The elven messenger looked at the frosty Austin, and suddenly sweated and rushed away. Looking at the other person's embarrassing back, Viscount Austin snorted disdainful, ordering, pass our military order, ready to siege. Yes. With the order, the soldiers of the 40,000 Sky Malaysia Army immediately acted, and soon surrounded Union City to leak. Generally speaking, the siege war pays attention to surrounding 3, but the Viscount Austin directly surrounds the Silver Moon City on all sides. This is undoubtedly a contempt. From the perspective of the East people, even if the army of the Elf Kingdom is forced to go on the way, there will be no threats. The only threat to the Tianmakor was the only Black Rider forces. Thinking of this, Austin Voriant looked back at the southwestern direction of Union City, where it really rose to smoke. With a smile, Austin's ordered to obey, prepare me for lunch. The fall of a garden city is the best meal show. Yes. Time passed a little bit, and there was no news from Union City. As if Queen Aisha and Angle Viscount have been determined to stay to the end. When the sun is hanging in the middle of the sky, the Viscount Austin came to the small dining table arranged on the position and sat down. He tied the napkin elegantly in front of the chest, picked up the knife and fork, cut a piece of beef, and ordered it to order. Road. Siege. Wine. Along with the sound of liang liang, the East soldiers began to attack Union City. They carried the siege beeper, carried climbing wooden ladders, and rushed to the 4 gates with a healthy movement. But what puzzled them was that the expected arrow rain never came. Many East people have begun to laugh at themselves. Those semi-elf will not be scared. At this moment, the 4 gates of Union City suddenly opened at the same time. The East soldiers slowed down a little bit, thinking, did they finally want to understand, ready to surrender? The Viscount Austin also saw the openness of Union City, which was open from a distance, and the beef just delivered to his mouth also stopped. It's too late to surrender now, make the whole army, and continue to attack. Yes. Viscount Austin is determined to give a lesson to the semi-elf. Moreover, his lunch needs a meal show. After all, I have started to install times, and naturally I have to install it to the end. Even if the opponent does not want to cooperate, the Viscount Austin will never agree. But then, the earth suddenly started to tremble. The rumbling horseshoe suddenly built the horn of the horse army corps and became the only main sound on the battlefield. Master Viscount, it is estimated that the surrender team of the semi-elf came out 11, Kong said with a smile. But the Viscount Orton did not laugh. His face became pale instantly. How can the surrender team have such power? This is clearly a cavalry army. Sure enough, the next second, he saw the dark cavalry team, such as the arrows rushed out of the open city gate. With the autumn wind sweeping the trend of fallen leaves, we will go to the east siege of Union City in the future. This chapter is finished. The original vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 145. Chapter 145. Crave. The steak in the hands of Austin was smashed into the plate. The splattered sauce was stained with a napkin on his chest, and even some of the expensive dresses splashed on the expensive dress. At this time, Viscount Austin had no thoughts to feel distressed his dresses. He only felt cold hands and feet, and his brain was blank. How could the Black Cavalry army hear? Aren't they hiding on the Mountain of Thorns? Adults, the enemy cavalry rushed out. What should we do? The rumor that the official saw the Viscount Austin on the spot and urged loudly. Austin suddenly was shocked, returned to God, and quickly ordered, "Hurry up, let the siege troops withdraw gather the soldiers and face the enemy." Yes. Although the military order had been set, the Viscount Austin did not relax at all. Because he knows that this battle, they are afraid that they are more fierce. The number of Black Riders is not large, only 8,000, scattered to the four sides of Union City, and it is estimated to have 2,000 in each direction. There are 40,000 people outside Union City, and there are about 10,000 people in each direction. 2,000 to 10,000. It seems that the Tianma Legion still has the advantage of the number of people. But in fact, accounts cannot be calculated. First of all, the Black Army is a cavalry, but the Tianma Legion outside Union City is a pure infantry. The infantry is naturally disadvantaged in the wild to fight the cavalry. The only way to win is to form a dense formation, using giant shields, long guns, bow and arrows and other weapons to fight back. However, at this time, the Tianma Corps has opened the formation of the siege, and the formation of the siege generally has a lot of killing in order to prevent the arrow rain in the city head, and the position will be extremely scattered. Moreover, the weapons in the hands of the soldiers are also siege appliances, not the weapon of anti-cavalry raids such as giant shields. What's more, the 40,000 Tianma Legion outside Union City is actually not a real elite. The real elite was brought to the Thorns Mountain by Marquis of Vincent and went to the Black Cavalry. These 40,000 Tianma Legion, which was originally preparing to face the Semi-Moon Guard, certainly did not choose the elite troops. But who knows, God seems to have a joke with them. The Black Cavalry did not appear in the Mountain of Thorns, but rushed out of Union City. I thought the opponent was a dregs with a combat effectiveness, but in a blink of an eye, a Digga Altman rushed out. Viscount Austin looked at the black troops coming on the face, and his heart was half cold. His first thought was to run away. But Liffet told him that the end of the escape would only be even worse. Because the two legs couldn't run four legs, they were chased by the cavalry, and they really became the lamb to be slaughtered. The rumbling horseshoe sounded as if the note was constantly approaching the Mama Legion. At this time, the military formation of the Tianma Legion did not have time to take shape at all. The timing of the Black Cavalry's choice was too clever, and the enemy was caught off guard. At the time of panic, the East soldiers could only lift the small round shields that were originally used to resist the rain of the city, but this kind of small shield was simply false in front of the cavalry charge. The East officers shouted loudly and let the soldiers list the guns. But in order to siege the city, they would not carry a weapon that hindered the action of a long gun at all. Only the archers shot the rare arrow rain against the Black Rider, as one of the few counterattacks. More soldiers of the Tianma military corps have already turned around and ran back. In the past 100 years, the shortcomings of the Eastern realm that have not encountered any war have been revealed at this moment. Viscount Austin closed his eyes desperately. The turbulent Black Army did not have any nonsense at all. The enemies met each other, and they were all jealous. With heavy riding as a lead, the light riding followed. In the face of poor protection, the scattered Tianma Legion, simply rolling over, is the best tactics. At this moment, the Black Army finally revealed once again, showing as the first strong army in the north. Boom! In a loud sound, countless East soldiers sprayed blood and were hit out like a doll. A team of the Black Army, as if the burnt red knife pierced the butter, swim into the military formation of the Tianma Legion without blocked, leaving a trace of flesh and fleshy behind him. In the face of such a heavy blow, the poor Tianma Legion has almost no power to fight back. In the worst battlefield, the worst time, they met the worst enemies. The rows of heavy cavalry pushed the flats, and the East military array was fragmented. The light cavalry then covered up, as if the black torrent of the mountains completely drowned the Tianma Legion outside Yunyu City. Austin opened his eyes again, and he saw a scene where his own formation was bruised by the Black Rider. "Master Viscount, let's go." After hearing the urging of He Kong, the Viscount of Austin finally returned and stood up from the table. In the panic, the rich lunch was hit to the ground. "Yes, I have to go quickly. I want to report to the conspiracy of the northern people to Lord Marquis." As if to find a reason for escaping, Viscount Austin rolled up and rushed to his own war horse, and then left the army and fled like this. He fled like this immediately, and immediately fell into the eyes of the generals of the Tianma Corps. When everyone saw their coach, even the napkins on their chests forgot to remove it, and the moment they fled, they completely collapsed. The panic infected made this Tianma army instantly become a running lamb. Therefore, their destiny is doomed. The Black Cavalry will not show a trace of mercy to them. Do not accept surrender, do not accept captives. The hatred of the Shadow Canyon can only be washed with blood. Kill, revenge. The Cavaliers of the Log had become a bloody man at this time, but he still held the night sword and cheered loudly. His voice seemed to be a bit weak, but he still shouted a burst of roar, but the sound was passed from back to the back of the battlefield, and the entire battlefield soon sounded like waves. Revenge! Revenge! Nympho! The shouting of killing rushed straight into the clouds, and even stamped the rumbling horseshoe at a certain moment. The sturdy northern cavalry turned into a group of revenge messengers, raised the bright steel knife high, whispered the sound, and vent a long time for a long time. The blood splashed like rain, and his head was thrown away. The screams of the soldiers of the Tianma army were connected, but they were quickly drowned completely, becoming an unreasonable noise. Can't fight, can't run away, countless desperate East soldiers can only put down their weapons and kneel to surrender. But this is still not exchanged for the compassion of the Black Army. At this time, these cavalry wearing black armor has become a cold-blooded demon at this time, and they are unwilling to stop the frenzy of killing. The East soldiers fell to the ground like wheat. The blankness appeared in the army of the Mama Legion, and the blood flowed wildly, and life disappeared instantly. After all, the black frenzy still drowned the outskirts of Yunyu. A slaughter kicked off. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 146. Chapter 146 Decisive. The Foot of the Thorns, the Tianma Legion Camp. In the temporary command, the atmosphere is stagnant and suffocating. Viscount Austin bowed his head down and kneeling on the ground, full of wolf. The napkin on the chest finally remembered it, but the dress was still stained with a little sauce. However, there are only sauce. No blood. It is difficult to make this look believe that he escaped from the battlefield, but it is more like he has just fell to eat with others. Austin also regretted it at this time. You should have some blood on your clothes. It's better to get some injuries to yourself. Just as he thought about it, Marquis on the opposite side finally moved. After suffering a series of blows, the temper of the Marquis in the east has become more and more elusive. He thought he would be furious after hearing the news of the 40,000 troops. But who thought that Marquis Wenson just listened to the report of Viscount Austin quietly, and then sounded lightly. It seemed like the news of defeat from the Vacus of Austin, but that he experienced a bad lunch. However, the long-term silence made the officers of the Malaysians feel like a mang and restlessly. Fortunately, Marquis Wenson still stood up after all. I saw him slowly walking in front of the Ostonan, and looked at his most powerful assistant, and could not see his anger in his eyes. Then he pulled out the sword around his waist. Seeing this in the case, the Viscount Austin was frightened. He knew that if he didn't do anything, he was afraid he would not guarantee a small life. "Ho, Master Marquis, please listen to me." Usage Wenwauju was sinking, but his movements did not stop. The moment the sword was about to cut to his neck, the voice of Austin shouted, "Master Marquis, I have a way to help you attack Unyu City, please give me an opportunity to atone for sin." Long Sword finally stopped. Xijabans of Vincent looked at the sweaty Austin, and asked lightly, "What is the way?" Austin Oski breathed a sigh of relief, and suddenly felt that his pants seemed to be a bit wet. But he quickly converged. Viscount Austin understands that this is his only opportunity. If this question is not answered well, he will definitely die here. "Master Marquis, although our army was defeated by the Black Rider outside Unyu City, but under the heroic counterattack of the soldiers, the Black Army also caused great casualties. Please believe in me, the Black Rider with a small number of people has not had much combat effectiveness at this time. As long as you give me another army, I will definitely help you to attack Unyu City." John did not agree immediately after listening to Viscount Austin. At the same time, the long sword in his hand still rested on the other's shoulder. The officers of the Tianma Corps in the camp heard the words of Viscount Austin, and they looked somewhat scorn. Obviously, it is difficult to believe that the unintentional dresses of Austin's bloody dripping blood are really bravely countered the Black Army and caused great casualties to the other party. But Viscount Orton felt that Marquis Wenson would believe. Because he knew that Marquis of Wanson had to believe. In fact, at this time, the best choice for the Tianma Legion was to withdraw. But this best choice is the worst choice for Marquis of Vincent. He must not accept such a result. In the first battle of the Shadow Canyon, the Tianma Corps took advantage of it, but only won a miserable victory. This has caused a great blow to the prestige of Marquis Wenson. That's why the Marquis wanted to wave the army north, captured Unyu City, and used a victory to restore his fame. But now, if the army is withdrawn, how can the Marquis of Woodson, who was damaged, explain to Duke of St Plus after returning? Moreover, Viscount Austin knew that the younger brother of Marquis, Evan, was not a peaceful person. Will he take the opportunity to fall down? Therefore, Vonanchal Austin determined that as long as there is a line of hope, Marquis of John of Winson will never withdraw the troops. And he will give this line of hope. "Master Marquis," Austin's Unson looked at Marquis, who was in the hesitation, and shouted again, "The army in Unyu City has not had much combat effectiveness, we only have a last blow. Please give me another chance. I will never let you disappoint. I generally don't give people a second chance." Marquis Wenson finally spoke. His voice was dumb and low, but in Austin's Viscount's ears, he was like an angel's voice. Sure enough, Marquis Wenson retracted his sword and said coldly, "But I would rather let you die on the battlefield, and I didn't want to dirty my hand." The Viscount Austin was relieved, and understanding that his life was temporarily kept. "However, I won't give you the army anymore this time, I will personally lead the Unyu City in person, and you, voice of Austin, you will charge in front of the battle as an ordinary knight. Yes, Master Marquis, as you wish. Viscount Austin stunned his right hand and said. It seems that I have forgotten that I have just fled. Gil Vincent also seemed to regain the state before entering Union City again, and his tone became exciting again. My cavaliers, my soldiers, please tell me, you have the courage to follow me, and to overcome the semi-elf king city. We are willing to follow your footsteps. Of course, all officers did not dare to oppose it at this time. Because Marquis of Wenson has not yet entered the sheath. They don't want to make themselves the object of the other party. Looking at the general officers who responded to his call, the Marquis of Wenson quietly flashed a trace of disappointment. He was really preparing to kill his individual. But I didn't think, all of them became so smart one by one. John, who had nowhere to vent, seemed to think of something, and asked in a cold tone, didn't you catch 4,000 semi-elves captives on the Thorns Mountain before? Yes, adult. Kill all. Everyone's heart was slightly cold and just wanted to discourage it, but when he saw Marquis of Vincent's cold eyes, none of them dared to speak out. Follow your will. Gil Vincent seemed to be dissatisfied, and he ordered again, cut off their skulls, along with those who died, the burn half-elves' heads, piled up under the Union City together. Tell the semi-elves in the city, if they continue to resist to the end, this is their end. Master Marquis, can't do this. Finally, an officer stood out and discouraged, if you do this, you will completely irritate the semi-elf and push them to the north. Oh. Unfortunately, before he persuaded, he was stabbed into his chest by Marquis of Vincent. Alas! The corpse fell to the ground. The strong bloody smell instantly filled the camp. Marquis of Vincent is like a magic sound from hell. Who else has any objections? No. Then do it. Yes. The Viscount of Austin, who was kneeling on the ground, only felt cold, but did not dare to speak at all. He suddenly realized that since then, between the semi-elves and the East, I am afraid that it will only go further and farther. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 147. Chapter 147 Bloody, Part 1. When Chen 11's first ray of light was shining in the head of Union City, a semi-elf guard yawned to his post. After rubbing his sleepy eyes, he was preparing to start a day of work. However, the next second, he was stunned. His eyes stared round, and his throat made a strange sound of. Subsequently, his entire body began to tremble violently. Vomit dash. He vomited. As if it was a signal. After him, the vomiting, strange sounds, and exclaiming sound of the vomiting, strange sounds, and exclaims kept sounding in the head of the city. Not good, not good, East people are killed again. The harsh alarm suddenly broke the tranquility of the early morning, allowing Union City to shrink in a tense and stagnant atmosphere. Even when the Austin led the troops last time, the garrison of the city head was not so panic. Because of the last time, there was no pile of heads under Union City. The head of the semi-elf. Just 2 days ago, the Black Army also rushed out of the city and killed the East people outside the city. At that time, the semi-elf soldiers were also asked to go out of the city to help clean the battlefield. At that time, the scene was actually more bloody than now, but the semi-elf did not feel much. After all, they died at the East. Now, the half-elves are dead. They are their compatriots. The morning wind brings a strong bloody smell, as if the whistling of death makes people breathe and make people cracking liver and gallbladder. The sobbing arms sounded like a low sorrow, convulsing that every semi-elf's atrium was convulsed. Just when the semi-elf defenders in the city were scared by the terrible scene in front of them, the East people outside the city did not immediately attack, but sent a messenger. Old acquaintances, Austin. To be honest, the Viscount Austin really doesn't want to come to Union City anymore, he has some psychological shadows here. However, Marquis Wenson had to come, and he had to come. Viscount Austin saw Queen Aisha on the tower. At that time, she was watching the semi-elf heads accumulated outside the city, and she didn't know what she was thinking. His Majesty, what you see now is the warning of Marquis of Chert Vincent. Lord Marquis came to Union City with expectations of peace, but I did not expect that you did not cherish this kindness essence. So, the Marquis is very angry. However, Master Marquis also said that as long as you are willing to change your mind, the cliffs, then his goodwill is still retained for you. Queen Aisha still looked outside the city, as if he had not heard the warning of the Viscount Austin just now. Austin thought that the young queen was scared, and he was a little disdain in his heart. He was about to speak again, but he heard the other person saying, "Austin, do you know how to cultivate a gorgeous blood rose?" Blood rose, Austin was froze immediately. Apparently, Queen Aisha suddenly raised such an irrelevant question. He shook his head, "Sorry, Her Majesty, I don't know how to raise flowers." Queen Aisha suddenly looked back and smiled, and at that moment the style made Vacus of Austin watch. To cultivate the best blood rose, blood, and head. Austin frowned, and he suddenly felt that he couldn't understand the beautiful queen of the semi-elf. Just as he didn't know how to pick up the queen, Colin came over and laughed. "The queen means, you can get rid of it?" Viscount Austin suddenly looked iron and angrily, "Angelin, you are a despicable guy. If the last time you were scamming, do you really think I would lose it to you? You wait, this time, the Marquis." "Austin," Queen Aisha interrupted the clamor of the other party, "you can get rid of it." "His Majesty, don't listen to the words of this northern country, he will only bring the semi-elf kingdom into the abyss of despair." Queen Aisha turned around, looking at Forless Austin, and said one by one, "Please go back and tell Marquis of Vincent, the semi-elf has his own choice, no one can let us yield." Austin seemed to want to persuade it again, but saw the bad eyes of Corin, and he hurriedly rushed, and then ran away. Colin helped the city stack, took a deep breath of blood, and sighed, "Sorry, let you sacrifice so many people." Queen Aisha shook her head, "You don't have to feel guilty, how can the war have no sacrifice? And, in fact, I feel that the semi-elf family should thank you." "Oh, why thank you?" Colin is a little puzzled. Although Esha is his blood, he has also undergone brainwashing, but he is not washed into his own brain disabled, right? Queen Aisha was bathed in the soft morning light, and the whole person seemed to shrink a layer of halo, which looked mysterious and beautiful. He only heard her in a low and powerful tone. The semi-elf family lived a long leisurely life under the wings of the glorious empire. Most of the people have forgotten what a cruel world is outside. They also forgot that no matter how much money is, they can't buy peace, let alone to respect. They even forgot that only swords and blood can win the power to survive in this world. Therefore, the semi-elf needs this time of sacrifice. Only the blood and heads of these compatriots can let the semi-elf see the truth of the world, and to awaken the blood nature in their hearts. Colin suddenly turned his head and looked at the Queen of the Elves beside him. The morning light outlines her beautiful face, but in the eyes of Colin, she is full of strong and perseverance. "I remember, is your family emblem of your Miller family?" "Yes, the blood-staining thorns." Queen Aisha also turned around, staring at the eyes of the man beside him, and spoke the family language of the Miller family one by one. "Only the thorns of blood can the enemy stop." Colin looked at Queen Aisha's deep blue pupil and suddenly laughed. The smile is full of appreciation without concealment. "I'm finally convinced that you are the king of the semi-elf family." Queen Aisha also laughed, and suddenly asked a question that was quite worried, "You don't worry, will a awakened semi-elf kingdom be separated from your control?" Colin laughed immediately, Control, no, no, compared to a weak slave that can be controlled, I hope to have a powerful partner who can cooperate. Queen Aisha also laughed, and the perfect smile seemed to completely dissipate the dignity in the air. I saw her stubbornly put on a skirt, bowed her knees to bow her head, solemnly accord ceremony to Colin, and said softly, "Lord Angra, I will always be your most loyal dependent, the most sincere partner." Colin laughed and lifted Queen Esha closer to her ear, and whispered, "Since you want to wake up the blood in your hearts, dare to follow me to play a big vote." A touch of Hungzia quickly appeared on Queen Aisha's fair and flawless cheeks. I saw her nodded obediently and eager to try. Certainly. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 148. Chapter 148 Bloody, Part 2. The Unyu city in the early winter is quite cold, and the cold wind that blows from time to time rolls a lot of dust to cover the sky. This garden city that was once taken care of by the semi-elf has also been cleaned up for a long time. Since the coup half a month ago, the clouds of war have been shrouded over Unyu city, causing residents in the city to breathe. Today, this depression seems to be a heavy point, and even the semi-elves who have always been adverse can't help but want to vent their inner fear and dullness. Although the skulls accumulated outside the city, although many semi-elves were panicked, they also lit more anger in the heart of the elves. The behavior of Marquis Vincent completely torn off the hypocritical veil of the East Army and exposed the bloody truth in front of the semi-elf's eyes. At the same time, a gossip spreads in the Unyu city at an amazing speed. The Eastern Army has to slaughter the city. Since the beginning of its birth, those who believe in the attachment and believe that money can be exchanged for shelter. At this moment, they finally felt the fear of the destruction. As the semi-elf was frightened, confused, and angry, a message suddenly came. Queen Aisha was about to make a public speech in the city center square. As if they had found the backbone, the semi-elves in Unyu city poured to the central square, looking forward to their queen can lead them out of the predicament at such a crisis. At noon, the central square had been squeezed out of water. A high platform was temporarily set up in the center of the square. In the eyes of all the expectations, Queen Aisha finally slowly appeared on the high stage. Aisha Miller, who is wearing a Queen of the Semi-Elf, looks so beautiful, and so noble and dignified. At this moment, she seems to be the incarnation of the goddess of destiny. The semi-elves gathered on the square seemed to be moved by that perfect figure, all of which held their breath, looking forward to their salvation. "My people," Queen Aisha said. The beautiful face was full of strong and quiet, and the unbelievable look seemed to be showing that no one could make her lower and proud head. "I know you are afraid, in fear. However, the enemy will not have compassion because of our fear and fear. On the contrary, this will only make them lift up the butcher knife without hesitation. Nympho. Wars cannot tolerate fear and fear, let alone tears and prayers. Only the sharp sword in our hands can be awesome. Nympho. The semi-elf clan can never rely on the asylum of others. Only a powerful army, not afraid of sacrifice warriors, and never words of unbeatable faith is the real backbone of the semi-elf family. Nympho. Faced with the intimidation of the enemy, we will never surrender, never succumb. We will fight to the end. Nympho. Please pick up the weapon and go with me. Fight in the city of Unyu city. Fight on every street, every house. Fighting in front of the Church of Glorious Lord, fighting in the eyes of the Goddess of Destiny. We will never surrender. Even if Unyu city is occupied by the enemy, we will continue to fight every inch of land in the semi-elf kingdom. Until the kind and fair God was moved by our unyielding beliefs, and his power was reduced to save this race worthy of his great grace. Ro. Queen Aisha's speech seemed to fall into the dry wooden pile at all, and instantly ignited the anger of the semi-elves for a long time. For a while, the entire center square was completely boiled. The enthusiastic semi-elves seemed to vent their anger and depression completely, and shouted that they finally gathered into a firm slogan. Fight to the end, never succumb. Fight to the end, never succumb. Fight to the end, never succumb. Nympho. The magnificent voice echoed in Union City, and the stagnation atmosphere shrouded in the city has been swept away. The dark clouds of darkness seemed to be so vibrating that the momentum was so vibrated, and it quietly dissipated, revealing the sun that had not been seen for a long time. The bright sunshine fell on the high platform in the center of Union City, and put a layer of dazzling halo to Queen Aisha, looking at the goddess who seemed to be as good as the world. The wonderful scenery of this heavenly induction made the semi-elves on the square even more enthusiastic. Many people have tears in their eyes, and they worship the chaotic prayer in their mouths, and they worship the shadow on the high platform. However, at this moment, the change is protruding. A dark arrow seemed to be a poisonous snake out of the hole, and shot lightning towards Queen Aisha. Oh! Legion passed through the chest, and blood sprayed out. The sacred and inviolable goddess in the eyes of the semi-elf just fell back in the eyes of the public. Time seemed to be pressed on the pause keys. For such a moment, the world seemed to be quiet and there was no sound. But the next second, the square will boil again. Protect the queen. Grasp the East assassin. Revenge for the queen. Nympho. All kinds of messy sounds have completely lost control in the square. How could the semi-elf could not believe that Queen Aisha, who had just brought them the hope of salvation, just fell to the high platform like this? The last rational strings finally collapsed. Under the guidance of the people who sprayed thin, it instantly pointed to the east. The sound of revenge for the queen was taller than a while. At this time, even if the weak semi-elf is unwilling to put the word surrender, it seems that it is an insult to them, but a blasphemy for Queen Aisha. Countless red eyes rushed to the recruitment office. They will adhere to Queen Aisha's will, fight to the end, and never succumb. The recruitment office of Menkraken has never seen such a lively and even enthusiastic scene. Just 5 hours later, the 30,000 preparation of the Union Guard was supplemented. Those semi-elves who could not join the army were unwilling to leave, and they asked for the military weapon to give them a weapon. Even if they could not join the army, they were willing to kill the enemy for Queen Aisha. The semi-elf clan, who has always been weak, was promoted by the intention or unintentional promotion of various factors, and was finally inspired by the bloody hidden in the heart. At this moment, they seemed to be unstoppable and fearless. With the further fermentation of this fanaticism, Colin even had to ask the officers of the Union Guards to restrain the men, which barely prevented the crazy semi-elf soldiers who wanted to rush out of the Union City, and the terrible battle with the East China decisive battle was terrible. Idea. However, the semi-elf who had nowhere to pour in anger still burned a fire in the city of Union City. Of course, this is not that they want to burn the city when they are crazy. It is to destroy the wisteria on the wall. These wisteria, which originally decorated the city wall, will obviously become a staircase for enemy climbing in the siege war. This line of the semi-elves seems to be solemnly announced. In the past, the weak race that was weak and greedy to enjoy it again was gone. The careful arrangement of Queen Aisha and Colin, and the god assist of Marquis of Vincent successfully stimulated the blood of this race. Although this bloody is still fragile, as long as it is guided reasonably, the blood and heads of the East are used as a sacrifice, maybe it can really cast the soul of the semi-elf clan. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 149. Chapter 149 Good News. The setting sun slowly penetrated the clouds and reflected the golden-brown glow in the head of Yunyu. The rising black smoke seemed a bit abrupt in the glow, and the city wall that was smoked by fireworks was extremely ugly. In the blink of an eye, the beautiful and prosperous garden city faded away, the impetuousness and superficialness of the past. Countless angry semi-elf soldiers persisted in the head of the city, staring at the scarlet eyes at the East Army outside the city, as if they were going to swallow them. The 4 gorgeous but vulnerable crystal city gates were also completely smashed, and they used a large number of broken stone sand soil to completely block the door hole to show their determination to decide not to surrender. Outside the palace of the half-elf, a large number of sorrowful semi-elf people gathered. They quietly prayed for Queen Aisha, and they did not want to leave for a long time. In the palace, the atmosphere is equally dignified. Until a female priest came out of the palace and reported with a smile, "Master, please don't worry, His Majesty has no worries of his life, but he is very important to recover for a long time." The semi-elf nobles who were struggling outside the palace were relieved. "That's good, that's good. Bless the Lord of Gel. Praise the goddess of fate. Nympho." Immediately, the priest was hesitant again, and it seemed that she didn't know if she should say the following. Her face fell in the eyes of the semi-elf aristocracy, and thought that there was something wrong with Her Majesty, and quickly urged, "What's the matter? Isn't it wrong with the body of Your Majesty?" Nympho. At this critical moment, Queen Aisha is really important for the semi-elf clan. At this time, only she can condense the semi-elf clan, and only she can make the race that has already revealed the meaning of madness not to be completely out of control. Actually, what I want to say is a good news. Seeing the urgent semi-elf aristocracy, the priest had to explain helplessly. That's even more. Yes, now the half-elf kingdom needs a good news. Under the urging of everyone, the priest had to say truthfully, "When I first helped Ma Majesty to check her body, I accidentally found that she was pregnant." Born. Her Majesty is pregnant. Nympho. For a time, the faces of the semi-elves nobles became somewhat strange. The minority semi-elf nobles even started to look at Colin secretly. The intimate relationship between the Viscount Angle and Queen Aisha naturally could not hide the eyes of the heart. Colin was stupid at this time. Am I going to be a father? Is it a boy or a girl? It turns out that the blood race also has breeding ability. Nympho. All kinds of complicated thoughts poured into the minds of Corin in an instant, which made him overwhelmed. Until he saw some sideline noble's slightly strange eyes. Colin quickly put away the smirk on his face, coughed a few times, and laughed. "Congratulations to His Majesty, I didn't expect the old king to leave such a remaining son, presumably he could rest in heaven." "I believe you a ghost." Some smart semi-elf nobles secretly talked. The old king looked like the half-dead appearance. How could he be able to make Queen Aisha getting pregnant? If he really has this ability, do you still need to let the queen adopt Prince to Pi? However, although the heart spit, on the surface, the semi-elf nobles nodded and said, "Yes, the old king can rest in peace. Yeah, at such a critical moment, this child must be God's will. That's right, it must be the grace given by the glory to the semi-elf." Nympho. Seeing that they had torn their faces with the East, these semi-elf nobles did not dare to offend the North. So even if you know that this child is likely to be Colin, the semi-elf aristocratic master can only recognize his nose. Colin nodded with satisfaction, and was very satisfied with these conscious semi-elf nobles. Well, everyone tells the people of His Majesty the two good news, so that they also understand that the gods did not abandon the semi-elves. Yes, yes. You all go down, let's take a look at His Majesty. After explaining this sentence, Colin walked into the Queen's palace with a state of mind. The semi-elf nobles exchanged their eyes with each other, and then they dispersed. When I walked into the palace alone, the Colin wielded hands and ordered, "Let's go down too." Yes. At this time, Queen Aisha was lying on the bed quietly, covering her pure white quilt. But seeing her face is beautiful, like fine carving, and weakness, there is an indescribable strength. When the maids left, the hall was quiet again. The Queen Aisha, who was originally seriously injured, did the diameter of the bed, and looked at the Colin road with a smile. We succeed. Double levels. In order to deal with the wound, Queen Aisha had no wicked upper body at this time, and only white bandages were bandaged on her chest. She sat up, and the thin body was immediately slipped down, revealing a blockbuster white. The undulating mountains couldn't help but take a moment of breathing. But he quickly stepped forward, let Queen Aisha lay back again, and shook his head and said, "If you know that you have been pregnant, I will not let you adventure." Queen Aisha laughed without care. "It's okay, I can feel that the arrow is not a big deal to me. The blood angel's divine power has seemed to transform me into another creature." Colin's eyes flashed and asked, "Then you have cultivated a good cultivation in the near future and drink more fresh blood?" "Oh yes, did I try to drink some high-level nights? Have you tried it?" "Try it? What changes in your body?" "No, except more delicious. It is no different from the blood of ordinary animals." "Woo. It seems that the blood cannot advance through the blood of the high-end knight." Colin recorded this, and then said, "You will be relieved these days, and you will give it to me." Queen Aisha shook her head firmly. "No, I have to appear again in front of my people again." Colin laughed a little. "You are addicted?" Queen Aisha vomited her tongue, showing a rare colorful color. "We finally stimulated the blood of the half-elf clan. It would not be a pity if it was not hot while it was hot." "Well, you will go to the city again for the first morning tomorrow morning," Colin sighed. "I suspect that even if the Black Cavalry does not dispatched, I am afraid that the East Army outside the city will not be able to attack Union City." Queen Aisha smiled, grabbed Colin's hand, and put it on a flat belly that she had not yet appeared, and affectionately, "I want to leave him a powerful semi-elf kingdom." This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 150. Chapter 150. Anxious. The sun rises as usual, and it is a rare good weather. The blue sky does not have any miscellaneous colors, and it is pure like a girl's unwilling dream. But looking at Jiaohe Union City wall, Marquis's face was somber. He didn't know what happened in Union City, but he could still guess a new mental state from the head of the city. This battle is not easy to fight. Just as his brows were locked, there was a burst of wind like a tsunami in Union City. It didn't take long for him to see a slender figure standing on the head of Yunyu. She looks so fragile, as if she can blow away with a gust. But it seemed particularly firm, as if nothing could break her backbone. That brilliant figure just stood in the head of the city and instantly made the entire Silver City boiling. Every time she waved, she would cause deafening cheers in the city. Is that the queen of the semi-elf? The mood of Marquis of Vincent had extremely complex emotions. I am scaring, envious, annoyed, and even the uncertainty possessive. Yes, Master Marquis Viscount Austin nodded, but his heart was full of doubt. When did Queen Aisha have such a high prestige in Union City? Marquis Wellswood watched Union City's head increasingly rising, and felt that he couldn't continue to wait. The semi-elf didn't seem to surrender, and he was going to follow a road in the north to dark. So he immediately gritted his teeth. Pass our military order, siege the city. Yes. 1. The whispering of the arms interrupted Queen Aisha's show. She frowned, pushed away the maid that helped her, reached out and pointed at the direction of the city, and said loudly, "My people, the enemy has raised the butcher knife. What should we do?" Blood battle to the end. Blood battle to the end. Nympho. At this time, the momentum in Union City had risen to the extreme, and even many semi-elf soldiers couldn't wait to connect with the Dongdi short soldiers to fight hard. It is absolutely not a situation to put it on the former semi-elves. Before changing, the city had surrendered long ago. Although the semi-elf army today lacks training, The combat effectiveness may still not be high, but their will to fight is never so firm. In the deafening shouting, the tragic siege war finally kicked off. The soldiers gathered like ants, and the arrows were like locusts. The dense East generals rushed to the trenches, rushed to the trench, rushed to the city wall, raised the cloud ladder, and then climbed up. Welcome to them, the arrows, stones, and hot oil that are constantly falling. The screaming and painful call signs suddenly became the main voice of this battlefield. The dazzling red, which cannot be covered, is the main color of this battlefield. With the joint efforts of the semi-elf and the East, the two sides have completely turned the city of Union City into a flesh and blood mill. The city wall became modeled in such a fierce battle. The corpse of the city's head accumulated, blood flowed down the city stack, and mixed with the blood stained on the city wall. Make the beautiful and exquisite Silver Moon City horrible and leak. The soil under the city also became soft and muddy, with a layer of dark red. It was not until the setting sun that the East Army stopped the offensive for a day. Countless soldiers retreated like a tide, leaving a strangely strange corpse. These corpses surrounded the Union City, and it was like hell to reproduce the world. Immediately, the flames of the city were burning outside the city. It was the battle between the two parties to burn the corpse and clean the battlefield. The air was filled with a bad smell, and it was vomiting. Jill Vincent saw the tenure of the semi-elf defenders on the first day, and could not help but have a cold back. He couldn't understand it at all. Where did the semi-elf who had surrendered immediately when he met the Imperial Army? Why did it seem to change a race overnight? What made him even more chilling was that from those who rushed to the head of the city and retreated, they learned that all of the semi-elves who guarded the city were no human. Therefore, the Black Club is probably not in the city. This is actually not unexpected by Marquis. If he is a Colin, he will not use a valuable cavalry to defend the city, but should be deployed outside the city. When the Eastern Army has failed to attack the city, he was killed from behind, and he fixed it. It is also worrying that this Black Club that I don't know where to hide is that even the Marquis of Wenson feels like when he wields the army and does not dare to attack at all, leaving most of the strength defense behind. At this time, the Marquis of Vincent has fallen into a dilemma. The idea of withdrawal appeared in his mind again, but he was eventually rejected by him. He couldn't withdraw from the East way like this. Otherwise, he will be difficult to wash the shame in the hands of the semi-elf in his life. With such shame, how can he inherit the position of the Duke of the East? How to make Dong Jingfen willingly sworn in his heart? Most of the Tianma Corps has been damaged in his hands. If he can't attack Union City, he can't even pass his father's level. You know, there are many children of Duke of Sanplas, especially the Chiao Evan, who is so intelligent that his father is a little bit afraid. He Vincent was not the only candidate for the Duke Wan. Therefore, Marquis Wenson can only clenched his teeth and continues to siege. At this time, he seemed to be a gambler who lost his eyes. He knew that he would only lose his family, but he couldn't accept it at all. The next day, in the sound of the drums of the army, the siege war started again. Primitive, bloody, brutal. In this battle, life is simply just cold numbers, and it does not attract the pity and hesitation of the commander. The army's fighting really can't tolerate too much kindness, which is a symbol of weakness. Once the enemy is discovered and used, it is the beginning of disaster. At this time, the casualties of the semi-elf were also extremely serious, but fortunately, the operation of Queen Aisha and Colin successfully stimulated their bloody. A large number of recruits were immediately called to join the army and quickly replenished the city. Once Queen Aisha, every other time, he will come to the city building to inspect. Whenever she appears, she will make the front-line semi-elf soldiers burst into amazing combat effectiveness. However, the East Army is still more elite compared to the semi-elf. On the third day, the South City wall of Union City almost lost. Fortunately, Colin saw that the situation was not good, and quickly asked the Rygo Cavaliers and the Turd Cavaliers to lead the Angra family army and the St. Hilda family for help, so that the East soldiers rushed down. This frustration also made the East people feel a trace of despair. On the fourth day, the siege stopped temporarily. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 151. Chapter 151 Bait, Part 1. His Majesty. His Majesty. Nympho. Walking in the head of Union City, the rotten smell of corpses floating from time to time made Queen Aisha want to vomit. However, she still tolerated, and held the soldiers with white silk gloves one by one, with the right hand wearing white silk gloves. Being able to contact the goddess in his heart so closely, it undoubtedly excited the people of the half-elf to almost faint. The bloody battle of the 3 days seemed to become worthless. Colin followed Queen Aisha, watching the other party patiently condolences to the soldiers of the city, and suddenly understood why many politicians like to play wife politics. In terms of expressing affection and attracting people's hearts, women's advantages are too great. With a chin, Colin suddenly felt that he should let Wi Law learn with Queen Aisha. In the future, he may be able to come in handy. The condolences lasted all morning. Later, even the soldiers in the city began to feel distressed by Queen Aisha, and asked the Queen to return to the palace to rest. Queen Aisha had to end today's condolences. After getting off the tower, Colin helped Queen Aisha on the carriage. He was just ready to turn his body, but found that there was a commotion on the roadside. He didn't want to go to the party, but Yu Guang, the corner of his eyes, saw a familiar thin figure. Reaching out to recruit a guard, Colin asked, "What's going on there?" "Master Viscount, we caught the surplus of a Sci-fi family, and are preparing to expel Silver Moon City." After the coup, Queen Aisha confiscated all the assets of their family when liquidating the Sevasi family, but did not have a member of the family, but only expelled them from Union City. Unexpectedly, there was a fish that was missing in the city. "Go and bring her over." "Yes." Soon, a familiar face was taken to Colin. "Kathy, why don't you leave Union City?" This Khalil's former maid immediately knelt down and choked. "Master Viscount, we have nothing in the Saiva family. Where can we go out of Union City? Is it possible to hide our lives in the field, in our lives? Looking at each other's pitiful appearance, Colin didn't move, and sneered, "How, become an ordinary farmer, is a deserted life for you?" Kathy raised the face of pear blossoms with rain and cried, "Adult, even if I want to be an ordinary farmer, it is impossible to be at all. My surname, my appearance, without corresponding status, will only become a curse. If you leave Union City like this, I will only live a life better." Colin raised his eyebrows and felt that this Kathy was quite interesting. He was young, and he saw the cruelty of reality and the ugliness of human nature. "Okay, then I will give you a chance now. Thank you for your kindness. Don't rush to thank me first, but I want you to go to the East Base Camp, dare you?" Kathy stunned, and then nodded resolutely, "Adult, I dare." "Okay, if you successfully complete the task this time, then I can promise you and give the Seddon family a berries of a semi-elf kingdom." When Queen Aisha heard this, she opened the curtain in a timely manner, nodded to Kathy, and motioned her to endorse the promise of Colin. Kathy's face is ecstatic. As long as she can keep the nobles of the Saiva family, she has nothing to do. "Master Viscount, what do you want me to do?" Under the dark night sky, Marquis Wenson could clearly see that countless cavalry arranged neatly. They all shrouded in the black armor, only a pair of cold and indifferent eyes showed. Thousands of black cavalry arranged neatly, a long gun in front of them. Under the light of the moonlight, it seemed like a terrible force that pierced the sky. Slowly, the black cavalry team began to move forward. Their movement was not fast, but they revealed an unspeakable force in silence. It seems that no matter who is in front of them, it will be crushed ruthlessly. Gradually, the speed of the black cavalry began to accelerate. The neat queue also began to change, and between intentionally or unintentionally, it was intertwined into a looming cold face. He looked down at the dark earth with an indifferent look. Colin Angle. Marquis Wenson suddenly recognized the face. It seemed to hear his exclaiming, and those black cavalry instantly increased their speed to the extreme. Numerous black war horses, black armor, and long black guns, gathered into a black torrent, poured to Marquis of Vincent. John subconsciously reached out and touched his waist, and went to the sword of his own knight. In a panic, he looked back, but found that there was no one behind him. When he wanted to run, he felt that his legs seemed to have been firmly nailed to the ground and could not move. His body instinctively leaned back, until he was flat with the earth, and he could see the dark sky and the cold bloody moon. However, the black cavalry rushed over to him. The black gun tip of the black gun converged into a dead forest, and it was to tear the Marquis of Vincent into fragments. He was unable to resist and watched every black cavalry rushing towards himself. Suddenly, Marquis of Wenson only felt that there was a giant hand, stretched out of the dark sky, and lifted himself up. Numerous gun tip passed by his feet, and then disappeared into the dark void. Ah! Jill Vincent yelled and woke up from the nightmare. Hoo-hoo-hoo. He breathed greedily, as if a fish that had just been dehydrated. Jill Vincent looked at the surroundings blankly and looked down at himself. I just feel that my body is cold, and it is uncomfortable. He rubbed his eyes hard, and understood that everything just now was a dream. Lying down again, Marquis Wenson understood that he probably didn't want to fall asleep tonight. The Black Cavalry, Colin Angle. He whispered these two nouns that made him difficult to sleep, and looked at the top of the camp, and didn't know what he was thinking. Master Marquis, Master Marquis. Between confused, Marquis Wenson suddenly found someone calling himself. He woke up again and knew that it was dawn. What's wrong? Lord Marquis, we just caught a semi-elf who escaped from Union City. The Syvarov family, Marquis Woodson quickly sat up from the bed and instructed, immediately take her to see me. Soon, Kathy was taken in front of Marquis Wenson. Looking at the restrained semi-elf girl, the first sentence of Marquis of Vincent scared her. Just listening to him asked in an indifferent tone. Is it Colin sent you? This chapter is finished.